Heat pressed against my eyelids. I blinked, expecting a ceiling, but saw only searing blue sky. The hull rocked. During a family trip, I woke up inside a small boat in the middle of a lake. Alone, with my 9-year-old daughter. No oars. My parents and sister were gone. There was a note. You chose this. I didn't cry. I did this. 9 hours later, my parents and sister were calling their lawyers in a panic. But in that moment, I only felt the silence. Sloane lay curled in the bow, wrapped in a towel. Her breathing was heavy, too deep for a normal nap. I scanned the vessel. The engine key was missing, and the emergency paddles were gone, their clips empty. My gaze landed on a rock on the center bench. Underneath sat the paper. I unfolded it, fingers trembling from cold clarity. The words were typed. You chose this. It wasn't a message. It was a verdict delivered by cowards who didn't have the guts to face me. I looked at Sloane. The sun was climbing, baking the aluminum, yet she hadn't moved. Panic flared, sharp and hot. I scrambled to her, checking her pulse. It was slow. Beside her lay the thermos Dela had pressed into my hands. Chamomile, she had said, smiling with too many teeth. For your nerves. I unscrewed the cap and sniffed. Under the floral scent lay a chemical bitterness that turned my stomach. They hadn't just abandoned us. They had made sure we couldn't fight back. I stood up, fighting the dizziness swaying inside me. Lake Powell is a labyrinth of red rock canyons and dead zones. I checked my phone. No bars. No service. Flashed like a taunt. We were drifting toward the center of the channel, pushed by a lazy current. The shore was a distant line of brown scrub and jagged cliff. If I screamed, the sound would just bounce off the water and die. Nobody was coming. That was the point. We were supposed to disappear. I forced myself to sit. Panic consumes oxygen, and I needed every molecule. I looked at the water. It was deep blue, hiding submerged peaks. The distance to the nearest climbable bank was maybe 2 miles. In my current state, with lead in my veins, it might as well have been an ocean. But waiting meant dehydration. It meant exposure. It meant letting Dela win. I looked at the note again. You chose this. I folded it carefully and shoved it into my pocket. I stripped off my shirt and soaked it in the lake, draping it over Sloane's legs. She moaned softly but didn't wake. I'm coming back. I whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I promise. I took a drink from the warm bottle, tightened my shoelaces, and stared at the shoreline. The fear was a cold knot in my chest. But I wrapped my anger around it like armor. Then, without looking back at the empty horizon, I lowered myself into the water. 3 days before I entered the water, the only thing drowning me was debt. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen illuminating a stack of overdue notices. My husband's life insurance had evaporated into medical bills faster than I could track. I was months behind on the mortgage. The cursor blinked on a spreadsheet that refused to balance. I rubbed my temples, trying to calculate the miracle I needed to survive. Then my phone buzzed. It was Dela. My sister never called just to chat, so I answered with a knot tightening in my stomach. She skipped pleasantries, her voice smooth and practiced. She started talking about the trust and the parcel of scrubland I'd inherited. Apparently, it needed to be streamlined for tax purposes. She made it sound like a favor, a burden she was willing to shoulder. I should have asked why she suddenly cared about dirt in the middle of nowhere. It's just administrative, Beth, she said, the nickname sounding foreign. Mom and Dad are worried about you. She mentioned a figure that made my breath catch. The land wasn't worthless. She claimed developers were sniffing around. If we bundled our assets, we could see a significant payout. Enough to save my house. Enough for Sloane's tuition. The sharp desperation in my chest made me listen when I really should have hung up the phone. Then came the pivot. But we can't do business without reconnecting, she purred. Mom says Sloane looks so thin in photos. Does she even remember her cousins? The guilt hit harder than the financial offer. Sloane had been a ghost since her father died, retreating into silence. I looked toward her bedroom door, imagining her lonely sleep. My parents were offering a week at a rental near Lake Powell. A chance for her to be a child again. We can sign the trust papers at the house, Dela added casually. Make a celebration of it. I hesitated. Contracts shouldn't be signed on vacation. But the pressure was immense, a blanket of expectation. My mother texted me moments later, please, honey. We just want to help. I felt like the ungrateful daughter holding a grudge, while they offered an olive branch wrapped in cash. I told Dela yes. I heard her exhale, a sound suspiciously like relief. Later, we went to my parents' house for dinner. The mood was manic, almost too cheerful. While Dad was grilling, his phone lit up on the counter. I glanced over, expecting a text from a golf buddy. Instead, it was an email notification. The subject line was truncated but legible, regarding competency evaluation and custody. I froze. I reached for the device, but my mother swept in, snatching it up. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. I convinced myself I was paranoid. Grief makes you see monsters in shadows, and I was tired of being the broken widow. I wanted to trust them, because the alternative was unthinkable. So, I ignored the warning bells ringing in my ears. I went home and packed Sloane's swimsuit and sunscreen. I packed my hope for a fresh start. I didn't know I was packing for an ambush. I zipped the suitcase, sealing our fate with one motion. The rental house was a glass and steel intrusion on the desert landscape. It felt like a showroom for a life I couldn't afford. Inside, the air was refrigerated to a chill that prickled my skin. My mother was already in the kitchen, arranging fruit in a bowl with surgical precision. "Sleep well?" she asked, not looking up. Her hands didn't stop moving. The normalcy felt rehearsed. I poured coffee, trying to shake the lingering unease from the email I'd seen. Sloane ran in, breaking the tension with loud, chaotic energy. "Aunt Dela says we're taking 3 boats!" she shouted. I looked at my sister, who leaned against the counter scrolling through her phone. "Better for spacing," Dela said, looking up with a tight smile. "You and Sloane get the little fishing boat. Quality time." It sounded thoughtful, but her eyes were flat. It was the logic of a chess move, not a family vacation. I nodded, ignoring the warning rising in my gut. We walked down to the private dock, where the heat was already rising off the water. The boats bobbed in the gentle wake of a passing jet ski. Dela stopped me at the gangway. She held out a silver thermos. "Chamomile and honey," she said. "I know you've been stressed. It helps." I hesitated. The metal was cool in my hand. "Thanks," I said, touched by the gesture. I didn't notice that she didn't have a drink of her own. The separation happened quickly. Dela, her husband, and their daughter Kinsley took the sleek speedboat. My parents boarded the pontoon. They pointed me toward the aluminum fishing skiff at the end of the dock. It looked small and exposed compared to theirs. "Follow us to the canyon!" my dad yelled, revving his engine. The noise drowned out my doubt. I helped Sloane into her life jacket, checking the straps. We pushed off, the distance between us and them widening instantly. The lake was a stunning, violent blue against the red cliffs. I steered us into the wake of my parents' boat, the spray hitting our faces. Sloane laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in months. I relaxed, letting my guard down for the first time. I unscrewed the thermos. The steam smelled sweet, masking something sharper underneath. I took a long drink, letting the warmth settle my nerves. "Can I have some?" Sloane asked. I passed it to her. 10 minutes later, the horizon began to tilt. I blinked, trying to clear the sudden fuzziness in my vision. My hands felt heavy on the steering wheel, like they belonged to someone else. "Mom." Sloane's voice sounded miles away. She was curling up on the bench, her eyes drooping. "I'm tired," she mumbled. I tried to answer, but my tongue was thick and clumsy. The engine hummed a lullaby I couldn't fight. The water seemed to stretch, swallowing the sky. I slumped forward, my cheek hitting the warm metal of the hull. Through the narrowing tunnel of my vision, I saw the pontoon boat in the distance. It had stopped. My father was standing at the stern, watching us drift. He wasn't waving. He wasn't calling for help. He was just watching. A dark silhouette against the glaring sun. He was waiting for a problem to solve itself. Then, the darkness slammed down like a heavy steel shutter. The cold shock of the lake was the only thing keeping me conscious. My limbs felt like lead pipes, heavy and uncooperative. The chamomile tea, laced with whatever poison Dela had chosen, was still dragging at my nervous system. I kicked, fighting the urge to close my eyes and sink. The boat was already drifting away, a white speck against the red canyon walls. I had to trust Sloane would stay asleep. I had to trust my own body not to fail. I swam with a clumsy, desperate breaststroke to keep my head up. The note in my zippered shorts pocket felt like a burning coal against my hip. "You chose this." I wouldn't let that waterlogged piece of paper dissolve. It was my only weapon. If I drowned, the water would wash away the truth, leaving only their story of a hysterical widow. I focused on a jagged outcrop of rock in the distance. That was my finish line. That was survival. Time lost its shape in the water. The sun hammered down on my exposed shoulders, turning the surface into a blinding mirror. At one point, I thought I heard a boat engine. I stopped swimming, treading water frantically, waving one arm. "Help!" I rasped, my throat raw. But the sound was just the wind whistling through a canyon slot. The silence returned, heavier than before. I was hallucinating hope. I swallowed a mouthful of brackish water and forced myself to move. My knee scraped against something rough. I kicked again, and my foot found purchase on slick slime, covered rock. I dragged myself out of the water, gasping like a landed fish. The sandstone burned my skin, but the pain was grounding. I was alive. I rolled onto my back, coughing up lake water, staring at the indifferent blue sky. I couldn't rest. Sloane was still out there, drifting toward the main channel, where the houseboats churned the water. I scrambled up the embankment, my legs trembling violently. A dirt service road, cut through the scrub brush about 50 yards away. I stumbled toward it, waving my arms as a cloud of dust heralded a vehicle. An old pickup truck rattled around the bend, towing a small trailer. I didn't wait for him to slow down. I ran into the center of the road, screaming. The brakes screeched, tires biting into the gravel. The driver stared at me through the windshield. The man who stepped out was older, wearing a faded baseball cap. "Lady, you okay?" he asked, eyeing my soaked clothes and wild eyes. I grabbed his arm, my grip likely bruising. "My daughter," I choked out. "She's on a boat. Drifting. Mile marker 12. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask why I was alone. He just opened the passenger door. "Get in," he said, reaching for his radio. "I'll call the Rangers." He believed me. As the truck bounced toward the marina, he reached for a first aid kit. "We'll get you to the clinic," he said kindly. "You look like you're in shock." I grabbed his wrist, stopping him. The drugs were making the world spin, but I needed to be crystal clear. "No clinic," I said, my voice hard. "Not yet. Take me to the police. I need them to seal that boat before my family gets to it." The rain slicks the concrete, turning the alley into a mirror of neon distortion. Elias presses a hand against his side, feeling the sticky warmth of fresh blood soaking through his shirt. He shouldn't have stopped, but the dizziness hit him like a physical blow. Ahead, the service door to the terminal stands slightly ajar, a gap of inviting darkness in the glare of the streetlights. He checks his watch, the glass cracked but readable. He has 4 minutes left. If Kale isn't there, this entire nightmare was for nothing. He slips through the gap, the metal scraping against his jacket with a sound that seems deafening. Inside, the air smells of stale oil and damp rust. Shadows stretch long and jagged across the floor, hiding anything that might be waiting. He draws his weapon, the grip slippery in his sweating palm. Every step sends a spike of agony up his ribs, forcing him to grit his teeth to keep from crying out. He needs to reach the control room on the upper level. A sudden clank echoes from above. Elias freezes, pressing his back against a cold support pillar. High above on the catwalk, a silhouette detaches itself from the gloom. It isn't Kale. The figure is too tall, the movement too precise and predatory for an anxious informant. A red laser dot dances briefly on the floor near Elias's boot before sweeping away. They found him faster than he anticipated. He looks for a way up, spotting a rusted ladder 10 yards away. It's an exposed sprint. A desperate gamble that he is currently in no condition to win. He unclips a flare from his belt, his fingers fumbling with the cap. With a sharp twist, he ignites it and tosses the sputtering red light toward the far corner of the warehouse. The distraction works for a heartbeat. As the shooter turns, Elias bolts for the ladder, his breath tearing at his throat. A suppressed shot pings off the metal railing, just inches from his head. He grabs the rungs, hauling his weight up with a grunt of exertion. Pain blinds him momentarily, white and hot. He scrambles onto the grate, rolling behind a generator for cover. The shooter below is shouting into a radio now, calling for backup. Elias crawls toward the meeting point, a small office at the end of the walkway. The door is wide open. Inside, slumped over a console with a single bullet hole in his forehead, is Kale. The contact is dead. But the man's hand is clenched tight around a seemingly innocent object. It isn't the money. It is a terrifyingly familiar silver key. Elias pries the key from the dead man's clenched fingers. It opens the lockbox back at the safe house, the one he swore never to touch. He realizes now that Cale wasn't selling him out. He was trying to arm him. The radio chatter below grows louder, joined by the heavy thud of boots on the stairs. He is cornered in a dead man's tomb. He looks at the console Kyle died on. A surveillance feed flickers on the screen, showing the street outside swarming with black tactical vans. There is no going back down the way he came. He shoves the silver key into his pocket and scans the room for options. A ventilation grate sits loose near the ceiling, vibrating with the hum of a fan. It is tight, filthy, and his only chance of survival. He holsters his gun and drags a chair over, ignoring the screaming protest of his injured side. As the door to the catwalk bursts open, Elias vanishes into the dark throat of the vent, leaving only blood behind. The metal tunnel reeks of ancient dust and galvanized steel, amplifying the harsh scrape of his own movement. Elias drags his body forward, inch by painful inch, forcing his injured side to bear weight it cannot support. Below, muffled shouts bounce off the concrete floors, the hunters coordinating a tight perimeter. They know he is in the walls. He pauses to breathe, sweat stinging his eyes, and hears a distinct metallic rattle from the section behind him. Someone else is in the ductwork. They didn't just send shooters, they sent a ferret to flush him out. Panic flares, hot and bright, but he forces it down into a cold resolve to keep moving. He scrambles faster, the jagged screw heads tearing at his trousers. The rattling behind him grows louder. A rhythmic clatter of hard knee pads on sheet metal. He spots a sliver of light filtering through a grate 20 feet ahead. It is his only exit point before the tunnel narrows into impassable machinery. He lunges for it, his bloody hand slipping on the smooth surface. The noise behind him stops abruptly, replaced by the sharp hiss of a gas canister. White smoke begins to curl around his boots, acrid and chemical, burning his throat instantly. Elias kicks the grate with his good leg, the metal groaning under the impact of his desperation. A second kick snaps the rusted latch, sending the grate clattering into the void below. He tumbles out headfirst, tucking his shoulder to absorb the fall. He hits a stack of cardboard boxes, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He lies there gasping, staring up at the open vent as the white gas billows out like a phantom, searching for him. He rolls off the crushed boxes, his vision swimming with gray spots that refuse to fade. The room is a loading bay, vast and illuminated by harsh sodium lights that turn everything sickly yellow. High windows show rain lashing against the glass, blurring the flashing lights of the tactical vans outside. He checks his weapon, finding only 3 rounds left in the magazine. It is not enough for a firefight. He needs wheels, and he needs them before the gas clears or the door bursts open. A row of dark vehicles sits silently waiting for export. Elias limps toward a sleek, black sedan parked nearest the rolling shutter door, its polished chrome gleaming. It looks out of place among the industrial grime, a luxury item waiting for a wealthy buyer. He reaches for the door handle, praying it is unlocked, but the mechanism is rigid. He freezes, hearing the heavy mechanical whir of the main bay doors beginning to rise. The tactical team is breaching the perimeter. His hand brushes the silver key in his pocket, the jagged edges pressing through the fabric. A sudden, wild intuition strikes him amidst the chaos. He yanks the silver key free, blood smearing across the shiny metal surface as he jams it into the door lock. It slides in with a perfect, buttery smoothness that feels almost preordained. The lock clicks, a sound louder than the rain, and the door swings open. This wasn't just a random safehouse key. Cale had prepared an extraction vehicle. Elias slides into the leather driver's seat, the smell of new car scent clashing with the iron stench of his own blood. He presses the start button, and the engine roars to life. Tires screech against the polished concrete as he slams the car into gear, ignoring the agony in his ribs. The bay door is only halfway up, a jagged mouth of steel teeth threatening to crush the roof. He floors the accelerator, the engine screaming as the sedan shoots forward. He ducks instinctively. The windshield shatters the moment he clears the threshold, bullets spiderwebbing the glass. He punches through the wooden barricade outside, metal shrieking against wood, and swerves violently onto the wet asphalt. The tactical vans are too slow to react to the sudden aggression. Rain drums a frantic rhythm on the roof as he weaves through the labyrinth of shipping containers. He checks the rearview mirror, watching the headlights of the pursuers fade into the storm. He takes a sharp left down a narrow service road, killing the headlights to vanish into the gloom. The adrenaline begins to recede, leaving a cold, trembling shock in its wake. He presses a hand to his side, his fingers coming away wet and dark. He is losing too much blood. He needs to stop. But stopping now means dying alone. He steers the car under a derelict overpass, the engine idling with a low, powerful purr. Safe for a moment. He leans back, his breath fogging the cracked windshield. He glances at the passenger seat, noticing a black leather satchel resting in the footwell. He reaches down, hauling it into his lap with shaking hands. Inside, there is no money, only a stack of photos and a single, heavy dossier. The first photo stops his heart. It is a picture of him, taken yesterday, sleeping in the safe house he thought was secure. Cale was watching him. Elias stares at the photograph, his blood turning to ice despite the fever burning through his veins. The image captures him defenseless, mouth slightly open, unaware of the lens hovering inches away. He drops the photo, feeling a surge of nausea that has nothing to do with the bullet wound. The rain outside hammers the car roof, a relentless drumbeat, matching the throbbing in his side. He thought Cale was a partner, maybe even a friend. Now, he looks like a handler managing a volatile asset. The betrayal cuts deeper than the lead. He digs deeper into the leather bag, his fingers stiff and clumsy. Beneath the dossier, his hand brushes against cold plastic and sterile wrapping. It is a trauma kit. Cale hadn't just prepared the car. He had anticipated the violence. Elias tears open a package of clotting gauze with his teeth, the taste of plastic mixing with the copper tang in his mouth. He packs the wound, gritting his teeth until his jaw aches. The pain is blinding, white, hot and absolute. He screams silently, squeezing the steering wheel until his knuckles crack. When the black spots fade from his vision, he turns on the dome light. He opens the dossier, the pages damp from his blood-soaked fingers. It isn't a hit list, it is a log. Dates, times, locations. Every move Elias has made for the past 6 months is documented here. but the notes in the margins are what stop his breath. They are written in Kyle's frantic scrawl, filled with question marks and circles. Subject compromised. One note reads, "Pattern mismatch," says another. Kyle wasn't the one controlling him. Kyle was investigating him. A sudden realization hits him. Colder than the wind, leaking through the broken windshield. If Kyle was investigating him, then the ambush at the warehouse wasn't for the money. They were cleaning up loose ends, and Elias is the loose end that refused to snap. He scans the paperwork again, looking for the source of the order. There is a logo stamped faintly on the bottom of a transfer slip. It is a stylized hawk, geometric and sharp. He has seen it before, etched into the slide of the gun that shot him. He cannot stay here. The engine idles smoothly, a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. He shifts into gear, pulling out from the shadows of the overpass. As the tires grip the wet asphalt, a phone buzzes. It is not his burner. The sound comes from the satchel, vibrating against the plastic trauma kit. He freezes, letting the car drift toward the shoulder. He fishes out a sleek, unbranded smartphone. The screen lights up with a single word: verify. It is a demand, not a question. Elias stares at the glowing screen, the light casting ghoulish shadows on his pale face. Answering might trace his location, but ignoring it keeps him in the dark. He swipes the screen and holds the device to his ear, saying nothing. The silence on the other end is heavy, filled with the static of a secure line. Report status. A synthesized voice commands. It is devoid of gender or inflection. Elias tightens his grip on the phone. They think he is Kyle. They don't know the extraction went wrong. Target acquired, Elias rasps, his voice rough enough to pass for a dead man's stress. He coughs, hiding the pain behind a mask of professional detachment. Extraction complete. Moving to the secondary site. He waits, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The silence stretches, agonizing and long. If they ask for a code, he is finished. He watches the rain smear the city lights into streaks of neon. Finally, the voice responds. Proceed to drop point Alpha. Do not deviate. The line clicks dead. The car's navigation screen flickers to life, overriding the previous map. A red pin drops onto a location near the docks, 10 miles east. Drop point Alpha. It is a trap, or a test, or a grave. Elias doesn't have a choice. He merges onto the highway, the sedan gliding effortlessly past slower traffic. He needs to know who is on the other end of that line. The dossier slides off his lap, revealing one final photograph stuck to the back cover. It is not of him. He picks up the picture, steering with his knee. It shows a woman standing in a crowded market, looking directly at the camera with a terrifying intensity. She is wearing a gray coat, and in her hand, she holds a familiar silver key. Elias feels a jolt of recognition that transcends memory. He knows her eyes. They are the same shape as his own. The caption underneath is typed in bold red ink. Asset Origin Sybil. The name triggers a headache, so severe it blurs his vision. He isn't just an operative, he is the asset. The realization crashes into him, rearranging the puzzle pieces of his life into a picture he doesn't recognize. The pain in his side becomes secondary to the hollow ache in his chest. He isn't solving a crime, he is discovering his own manufacturing. As he nears the exit ramp for the docks, the car's dashboard flashes a warning light. Proximity alert. A drone hovers silently above the highway ahead, its camera lens rotating to lock onto his license plate. Elias grips the wheel, eyes flicking between the slick road and the red warning light. The drone isn't firing yet, hovering like a silent vulture in the rain. He swerves across 3 lanes, cutting off a semi-truck that blasts its horn in protest. The machine above matches his lateral movement with terrifying ease. Military-grade hardware tracking a civilian sedan. He cannot outrun it on the open highway. He needs cover to blind the thermal sensors. The exit for the industrial district looms ahead. He yanks the steering wheel right, tires hydroplaning on the asphalt before biting into the off-ramp. The sudden G-force tears at his side, sending fresh waves of nausea through his gut. He ignores the wet heat spreading under the gauze. On the dashboard, the navigation screen flashes. Auto. Drive engaged. It is a risky variable, but his hands are shaking too violently to hold a steady line. He punches the confirmation button. The wheel locks into place, guided by an invisible, digital ghost. The sedan accelerates with precision, weaving through the maze of shipping containers. Elias isn't watching the road anymore. He is tearing at the dashboard panels. If the drone is tracking him, he must kill the signal. He rips out a chunk of plastic trim, exposing a nest of multicolored wires. The proximity alert whines louder, a high-pitched drill in his skull. He spots the transponder unit, a blinking black box. He smashes it repeatedly, with the heavy butt of his gun. The dashboard goes dark instantly, the navigation screen fading to black. The engine stutters but keeps running, stripped of its digital brain. Above, the drone halts, confused by the sudden electronic void. Elias steers the car manually now, guiding it under the concrete canopy of a disused rail yard. The rain stops hitting the roof, replaced by the hollow echo of the tunnels. He kills the engine and coasts to a silent stop in the shadows. He is invisible for a moment. In the silence, the adrenaline crash hits him hard. His hands tremble as he picks up the photo of the woman again. Sebel. The name tastes like ash. He flips the picture over, noticing a set of coordinates scrawled on the back in blue ink. They do not match the drop point. They point to a location deep within the city's old sector, a place that doesn't officially exist. Kyle didn't just leave a log, he left a map to the truth. A heavy thud against the trunk makes him freeze. It wasn't the wind. Someone is outside, right now, standing in the blind spot behind the vehicle. Elias raises his weapon, leveling it at the rear window. He holds his breath, listening to the soft scrape of leather against metal. A hand slaps against the driver's side glass, leaving a bloody smear. It isn't an enemy. The face pressing against the rain-streaked window is the woman from the photograph. Sybil has found him first.